Thank y'all for coming. You're in Make Drupal 7 Development Modern and Fun, or Fun and Modern. I don't know, I switched the words up back and forth. You know, ands are associative, so there we go. A little bit about myself, if you haven't noticed me from the Mario talk last night or see me at any other camp. I go by alias General Redneck. I get up here and talk technical talks in my overalls because us hillbillies and rednecks don't know much. But I'm just a good old country boy, just happen to know a little bit about computers. And I'm also the senior support technical lead over at 4 Kitchens. Speaking of 4 Kitchens, here's what we do. We build websites that depend on large-scale, unconventional content. And we try to help you figure out what you need to be able to make that work. We make content go. Specifically, in the support department, I help you do that on a day-to-day basis. Your Drupal 7 site, your Drupal 8 site, and your WordPress sites. Come talk to me if you need some help doing some support work. It's what I do. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about y'all. What y'all doing here? No, I know that's kind of abrupt. What brings you to this place? What are you looking to find out in this talk?
The meaning of life.
Oh, man. I don't know if I can help you there. I can give you my professional opinion on what the meaning of life is, but you might not like it. Yeah, go ahead.
We've got a majority of our sites are Drupal 7 sites still. Most of them were put up without proper planning, without proper organization. What is the hope of retroactively bringing some organization to bringing in some Composer and things like that? And that's the type of thing I'm looking for.
All right, so we're looking for hope. Hope with bringing in some structure using Composer and some object-oriented programming. So I was hoping that was what was going to bring you here. So this is what we're going to talk about. How many of y'all have used XAutoload before? Or even know what it is? Okay, that's cool. I'll tell you all about it today, exhaustively even. Just tell me when to shut up, because it's a fun one. I'm really passionate about it. I also want to talk to you about third-party PHP libraries, because in Drupal 7, this is really hard. In almost every instance of it requires someone to wrap a module around it. And I'm not particularly fond of that idea. And then we'll talk a little bit about Composer. How many of y'all use Composer for your day-to-day work? Is that all on Drupal 8 sites or PHP in general?
In general.
Okay.
Usually Drupal 8.
Yeah. I've been using Composer for Drupal 7 for 5 years now. Even before Webflow put out the official Drupal Composer Drupal project out there. The reason why I want to talk about this is I want us to try and keep our skills fresh. I want to keep them modern. I want to keep them compatible with the frameworks that are coming out. I say coming out, came out. So Drupal's got that lag behind a little bit. We're starting to get up to date with object-oriented programming. So it helps you, it helps me kind of get our skills in line with that, and it helps you if you're looking for another job in the PHP world, helps you transition over to that as well. Helps you make bigger, better design choices. Also want to make our code more reusable for more situations. Who says it has to be a Drupal module? It could be a PHP library that's put onto, I don't know, a Laravel site. Just think about that. I also want to be able to use third-party libraries in my code. It makes my life easier. Someone's already built that wheel. And I also want to push the boundaries of my, patterns and designs. So that's why I do this, and I find that kind of stuff fun. I don't know about y'all. Let's talk about Autoload. So I got kind of ballsy with this one, and I made this entire presentation a live demo. So we'll see how this all goes down. I'm pretty sure that you won't be disappointed. So we were talking about Lando at the session before this. I use it really heavily for my development because it makes things easy. But let's talk about XAutoload for a minute. XAutoload is a module that you can go download from D.O. The whole point of it is, and it seems like really big, complex code, but it really does one thing. It adds auto loading using PSR standards, PSR 0 or PSR 4. Just like your Composer projects do, just like Drupal 8 does. This way, you can now build your library in object-oriented code without having to go and say include this file, include that file, or listen out a whole bunch of files, or jumbling all your classes up in a single file. It lets you use your normal object-oriented auto-loading capabilities, and it does it independently of using Composer. You can put this on your site right now, and it'll give you that ability, and you can start injecting some code into your site that way. Let's go take a little example real quick, or look at an example real quick. So this is a module I wrote. You can heckle me about it if you want to. There's not a whole lot of functionality in this module. The whole idea is I want to show you an example in a really easy way, consumable way, of how we can use object-oriented programming within our modules. So this module is pretty standard module stuff. I took and I abstracted out the block functionalities with block info, block view, and I made it to where I could use a class to implement a block. Now I know like CTools has something very similar, and I just wanted to recreate the wheel a little bit here just to show you that it could be done, and it could be done pretty easily. So it's not the best design pattern in the world. I did it really what's the word? In a way that would be really quick. Prototype. That's the word I was looking for. In a prototype way. So, for instance, like whenever I created my registry here, it's simply just an array. It's an array of classes that I can use to go find my blocks. We could have done something a little bit more fancy here to go look for the blocks, but this is all module stuff to support my object-oriented code, which is all over here in the source directory, which you can see right here. And it's just like your Drupal 8 just like your Drupal 8 code. You have a namespace, Drupal module name. You add your classes just like this. And then, so in my case, I'm using a standard hierarchical structure of code. I created my base class and my interfaces for XEblock. XEblock is really simple. All it does is it like I said, it abstracted out those particular functionalities of a block. Get info, get machine name, get subject, and render for a block. And then I added some base functionality, so just like your standard Drupal 8 practices for developing. Then I added an implementation of that. So this is an example. So now let's go back to my module really quick, and let's take a look, see what this does. This registry says this is one of the blocks that I want to import into my site. Like I want Drupal to be aware that this block exists. So I told it, look for this class. Now I did it in the form of string because, like I said, I'm prototyping this thing. But we can use our classes just like you do in your Drupal 8 site. This is PHP. We're talking PHP. That's the whole point here. So I do that, and now the fun begins. All I've got to do now is type a minute. Let me see, XAutoload example. Enable the module. Okay, so what happened there is it has a dependency on XAutoload, so XAutoload was enabled, and my XAutoload example module was enabled. Now I can go, and I know this is the end result, and it's not super elaborate. It's going to add a dum-dum block, so we'll be able to go up there and see. And I haven't set up my URL there. Let me see if I can. I'm not used to using this terminal. And un momento. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to my structure, go to my blocks, and then I can find my dum-dum block right here, and let's put in the content. Now, like I said, this is all for the sake to show you that I can do object-oriented code. So now I've got my dummy block, and it says what a dum-dum. You can see that all over here in my class of XE block base. So, object-oriented code. Any questions so far? Okay, we're good. I'm going to move on a little bit further. So we talked about XAutoload. XAutoload comes with some pretty neat features around libraries. Who uses libraries module? Okay. If you haven't gotten into the gotten onto the Composer bandwagon for Drupal 7, it's okay. You can still use your Drush make workflow, the whole bit, to download your libraries into your libraries folder and stuff like that. The next thing I want to talk about in that regard is actually third-party libraries. Now, I took the liberty to get a really simple library. It's called the Lorem Ipsum generator, and that's all it does. It generates Lorem Ipsum text. This is just to show you an example of I was able to go out to the interwebs, grab myself a library, put it into my site, and then use it in my object-oriented code. Now, you can see that over here in my libraries folder, I have, let me see, yeah. This is, give me a second, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. There it is, okay. So the PHP Lorem Ipsum library is right here in my sites all libraries, and you see I just downloaded it verbatim. Now, whenever you're using XAutoload without Composer, you have to set up the libraries module to figure out where your code is. XAutoload then allows you to use namespaces within that library without the use of Composer. So for instance, in my case, I wanted to use the Lorem Ipsum. So I'm going to go over here to my other module that I built to demonstrate this, which is called library example block. So it adds a little parameter to the library's info hook. It's called XAutoload. And I can tell it how to grab the information to do XAutoload's autoloading stuff, for lack of better words. English is hard. Programming is easier. So in this case, I said, hey, using your little adapter function thingy there, go look at the composer file that's inside the library and use that class information. That way I don't have to go and redefine it. You can also do some other things, like if we go look at XAutoload's API documentation really quick, you can do all sorts of ways of loading libraries. And I'll show you that here. So for example, you can load it direct. You don't have to use libraries at all. You can use straight up XAutoload if you want to. That's what they're showing here. Use XAutoload to autoload this namespace. Okay. You can tell it to use or tell it where a composer directory is. But let's go look at the libraries information really quick. Here's one way they do it. They said, hey, this Rubenkraut library is going to be at this place, which is the library's Rubenkraut folder, and it's going to load this namespace out of the source directory. Or you can tell it to use the composer JSON, which is what I did. Now let's go take a look at the JSON file that's within this library that I'm using, which the libraries module is throwing me off because it's also called libraries. Give me a second. So let's so I'm not using Composer. I know that's kind of confusing. I'm using the Composer JSON to define auto namespacing, right? Because in Composer JSON they say, hey, look over here. To autoload this thing, we're going to use this namespace at PSR4. So why do I want to go back and redefine that when the library's already given me that information? You're going to probably commit this anyway, at least in your artifact, so it can go pull it out. So we did that, okay. All that to be said, I have now set libraries up so that it can load this library, and XAutoload will do the auto loading whenever I call that class name. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. I get a little long-winded sometimes. You gotta tell me and get to the point. So on down here, so I did the exact same things. I did an alter here because I want to add this block into my registry that I prototyped out for us earlier. And I add a little helper function here. Now, long story short, I created this loading function so that I can use this module if I have that library loaded via Composer or any other means. And if it's not loaded already, let's go ahead and load it using the libraries module. This way, depending on how someone sets up their site, they might not have Composer. They might. I will be sure to load this class regardless. That's the whole point of that. So let's go over here and let's go look and see what this library example block looks like. Oh, it does a info, gives me a Lorem Ipsum block, machine name. You've seen this before in my interface that I built earlier. Standard object-oriented programming. Then I said new Lorem Ipsum, which I used the use statement up here, auto loading in action. And then I said, give me a paragraph. So the whole point of that is now I can go here and do a Lando Drush enable libraries, and let me see, what's this one called? Library example. I misspelled something here.
Library example block.
Thank you. That's a good way to make sure people are, hey look, I can't, I'm dyslexic or something. It's an example. Alright, cool. So now the whole point is is now I can go in here and do the same thing. Refresh this, go to structure, go to blocks, go down here to my blocks, and you see the Lorem Ipsum block. Let's go ahead and put it in our content just so you can see. Now, I know this is a very lame example because I just recreated the wheel of how to build a block. But it's just to show you that object-oriented is possible now. And now I can take this library that I built here and abstract it out to do other things, like on other systems. Theoretically, you could take your Drupal 8 code and import it back into your Drupal 7 sites. Easier. Now, given that, there's a lot of like the plugin system and stuff you have to deal with whenever you're porting code back. However, the benefits of having light structured code between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 modules is phenomenal, because you can literally copy and paste, or you could potentially do like a cherry pick out of a commit or something of that nature. It makes maintenance so much easier, and it lets you do more of the fun stuff, right? You've lowered your maintenance costs, so now you can go do more R&D stuff. You can go through, do more object-oriented code, etc. So that's to show you I've done all this without Composer so far. Now the fun part is, let's add Composer to a Drupal 7 site. How many people have actually done that before? Okay. So this is a new one probably for you. Do any of y'all use the Composer Drupal project template for Drupal 8 at all? Or do y'all download your Drupal 8 core and then use the Composer file that's within the core that you download, like out of the zip?
Sounds like a tier 3 question.
Okay.
Composer project. We use the Composer
Yeah.
project. Always.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel of how, yeah, what your workflows are. So here's the thing. So you can go over here to, let me see, Composer. I should have had this one already up, but you can go to Drupal Composer Drupal project. Here's your instructions on how to make a fully Composer-based project. And what it does for you is it allows you to pull in the dependencies independent of the dependencies that come with the zip file in your composer.json there. And it also abstracts everything outside of the web root. Because one of the biggest challenges is in a Drupal website is security. If you have all your libraries and things outside of the Drupal space, outside of the web root, it's a lot more secure. You won't have people in there able to mess with or look at your code. I know that there's things to prevent that, namely your .htaccess files and so on and so forth. But if you don't have it in the web root at all, there's nothing that you need to protect. That's my little spiel for that really quick. It also allows you to create a source and an artifact build. Do y'all know what I'm talking about there? That's where a source build is, hey, I'm a developer, I change this one requirement, and then I hit commit, I put in a PR, and I have one line of change. And it says, I created a new, I installed a new library. As a developer, I don't care what kind of code is in that library. I don't want to commit all that to my project. So, as a code reviewer, hey, good job, you installed or you upgraded that library. That's all the review I've got to do. Instead of weeding through, how many of you have had to weed through views module to try and find that one file someone updated? You know, they updated views at the same time that they created a feature, and then you have to go find that feature code in amongst the module upgrades. And then GitHub says, oh, you have over 3,000 changes. I'm not going to show you what these changes look like. You don't have that with a source and artifact build, is what I'm getting at. So literally, if I was to go commit what I have now, I would, with the Composer project, I would only get my custom modules and a little bit of structure and the scaffolding files. So scaffolding files are your index.php, your robots.txt, those things. So that would be committed to my project, but like core, you wouldn't see any of core, you wouldn't see any of the contributed modules. And that would be my whole project. It's really easy to do too. All you have to do is come over, well, y'all know how to set up a Drupal 8 site. So let's go set up a Drupal 7 site. All we got to do is do a composer create, and then we have our site, our scaffolding. Then from there, we go over here to composer.json, and I start adding my requirements. Oh, wrong one. Un momento. All right, so most of these composer requirements come in ahead of time with the project. I added libraries, I added XAutoload, and I added my third-party library, which was the Lorem Ipsum generator. So this is a Drupal 7 site. The difference is, if you go to the packages, you put 7 here instead of 8. You get a little bit more configuration down here, which comes with the project, so you normally don't have to touch that. And you also there's a little bit of, so one of the biggest challenges with setting up a Drupal 7 site with Composer is that you have all of the directories inside of Drupal. So like in Drupal 8, they mitigated all that by taking core and setting it in the core directory, right? In Drupal 7, Drupal is spread out across the root. So you don't have like a core. So what we have to do is we have to we have to set up our installers, and we have to preserve some paths, which is, trying to find that one real quick. The path. Oh, there it is. Preserve sites. So we have to preserve our sites folder, and that's it. You know, at this point, once you did that composer create and you brought that down, I mean, like I said, it's literally one command. Then you start doing your requires. Then you can start doing set up your Lando, all that jazz, and you get a project that looks like this over here. It's your standard Drupal site, and I can show it to you in a file manager, so it may be a little bit easier to see. Let's see. Let's go to my workspace, and let's go down to my MidCamp, and see. This is my project. Web. This is my Drupal. Pretty simple. All right, so all that long spiel to say, okay, I've loaded my library up via Composer. There's one little problem though. Composer's not auto-loading, because we got to say include autoload.php. XAutoload doesn't do that for us. Remember I was telling you about how you can use it independently of Composer? Well, there's a neat little module that comes with this project called Composer Autoloader. It's already built in. All you gotta do is enable it. So we go over here and we do a drush, Lando drush, enable Composer Autoloader. Okay. Now I'm going to disable libraries because I don't need it anymore. I loaded my library in Composer, so why use it? So I do Lando drush. I always forget the shortcut for that one.
Yes, DIS.
DIS? Okay. And so I don't disable very often. So yeah. So we disabled it, and now in theory I'm going to go ahead and do a CC all just to, and let's go to the website. And let's refresh this page. Look, we still got Lorem Ipsum text. That's using Composer. So, all that said, there's a bunch of benefits to using Composer. In particular, you get your patches and all that jazz for free, just like you do in Drupal 8. You use the patches down in your Composer file. They're documented. It applies when you do a Composer update, etc. Yeah, and you can use. Anyone heard of the Composer merge Composer plugin before? The whole point of that is to take Drupal core uses it, and it takes another composer.json and pulls it into your main one. It's like, include this composer.json. And what you use that for is your custom modules. So you're not committing your custom modules to their own projects. Let's commit them to this project, which is our Drupal site. Then define all of my requirements for that module within that module. Because why do we want to put it up on the site level? You can, if you want to say like ease of use and not hide them or whatever, but you can also put them with the module. And that way, you can manage all that code in chunks. And so if you remove the module, you remove that dependency, and therefore it cleans up cruft. You don't have to go through all your libraries and figure out, oh, which one did this one depend on, and clean it up. Just a thought. Yeah. So are there any questions about Composer? Like, did it seem like I oversimplified it too much? Do you feel confident you'd be able to go start your own Drupal 7 site?
Well, I mean, now I kind of want to spin up Drupal 7 in Composer because we've only done it in 8, so but it looks very, very similar to that.
Yeah, and that's the point. Yeah.
I don't want to try it now. I looked into like the how to do like patches and stuff like you would do in DrushMake, and it sounded like there was some kind of limitations with that capability compared to DrushMake, but this was probably like a year ago or so that I looked into it.
Not as far as I know. Not as far as I know. I don't know of any limitations to patching ability as of now that the Composer Patches plugin adds. Of course, it does remove the project every time you do an upgrade. It removes the whole project. So say we're patching the views module, it removes the whole views module because it's probably patched. Downloads the new one or whichever one that you told it to, and then it patches it. So you have that. Now, what we normally do when we're using Pantheon, we use like build tools and their built out Circle CI process to do what they call a what I call an artifact commit. They call it in the scripts building assets. Okay, so we all know that when you're working on Pantheon or you're working on Acquia, you have to commit everything, otherwise it's not there, right? So like I have to go and commit all the modules, etc. The way build tools workflow works is you do that like on your CI, and it goes and it changes part of your git ignore so that now you're committing all your modules and stuff. So when I'm reviewing my code, the code is a source. It only has my custom modules, my composer file, and some of my tooling, right? When we do an artifact commit, it then goes ahead and runs all that composer install, all that jazz, and then does a force commit with all the modules as a separate commit. So what happens there is they push that up to Pantheon, and then you have all that. You can roll back to the source commit or whatever. And it orphans a bunch of commits up there, but that's, you know, it's okay. It's a way to maintain your history, so to speak. And I could show you something like that pretty easily. Let me think. What is a good one that I have that's that way? I like Git Kraken because it's a really good visualization of your Git history. And you'll be able to see that here. Let me get one of our Drupal 7 sites up. I'm drawing a blank real quick. And that's what happens whenever I do something on the fly like this. So I'm going to go into one of our clients really quick, which, I mean, they're okay with me sharing this, so let's see. So this should show you what I'm talking about as far, you see all these Bender to robot commits right here. These are what I'm talking about. So if you were to look at the commit, it's literally, it'd be something like, okay, which this one's not so much that way because we're using an artifact build, but it would be all the modules, like the whole contrib modules folder, the vendor folder, everything would go in that commit. And it'd be that for every single one of these. Now these are multi-dev commits, like we push up on each PR, we push up we run the build tools through our CI, which pushes up a branch to Pantheon, which then spins up a multi-dev so that we can test it on the fly. It's really nice because then one of us don't have to manually do that. That's less work we have to do. But using Composer, Composer works really well in conjunction with all this is what I'm getting at. Because you tell your CI to do a Composer install, you commit all that, push it up to Pantheon, hey, you've got a site that you can test. I know, it's a lot to take in. So if you want to talk about it in particular though, I do DevOps really heavily. I specialize in it, in fact, and I find it lots of fun. So we can talk about this offline if we want to, and talk a little bit more about Composer if you want to. So where do we go with that? At this point, I'm pretty much out of content. We've talked about Composer. We've talked about adding third-party libraries to our code. And we've talked about object-oriented coding in Drupal 7. I find that lots of fun. I find that it makes my day-to-day more exciting because I get to flex those muscles that I don't normally get to do on a Drupal 7 site because I'm a support engineer. I hope that this helps y'all in the same capacity as it does me, and I hope that it makes any of the sites that you support more of a joy than going through the old functional programming. Do y'all have any other questions? We've still got a little bit of time.
Have you converted Drupal 7 sites and added the Composer workflow and then used that for module updates and sort of?
So the question is have I taken an existing site and converted it to Composer? Yes. Now there's a challenge here we have to talk about, and that's how do you get all these modules that these people have amassed over the years into a Composer file? Does anybody know that off the top of their head? Well, I mean, the very manual way is go in there and do a Composer require Drupal / this name, that name, going through the modules folder, doing it manually. That's really annoying. A tool that's really handy for it, there's two of them. I can't remember what the second one's called, but the first one is actually using drushmake to do it. So drushmake has a really handy command, and that's drushmake. But it's also got a flag that you can specify the format on. That flag is INI file, old school, YAML file, that's better, and Composer file. You can get composer.json straight out of drushmake. Caveat, it doesn't make it pretty, and you have to go and edit it. What it's really good for is it takes the bulk of the work out of what you're doing though. You can go copy and paste all of the requirements that I gave you, because it's going to go in there and make one that's like Drupal module name, and it's going to assign it the wrong version of 7.something.something. In the old packages before D.O took it over, we had one packagist. It contained Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 modules. So the way you specified your module versions was 7.1.0, or you just took out the dash, .x dash. Yes. So it was a Drupal 7 module if it was 7.something. It was a Drupal 8 module if it was 8.something. Since they separated out the two sets of modules into two separate packages, now you just type in everything except for the 7, like 7.x or 8.x, right? So whenever I want to require, let's say, views 3.0, I just say views 3.0 instead of 7.3.0. But drushmake was made on the old workflow, so it puts in those numbers. So you have to go through and do some cleanup. Another thing it does is it includes your custom modules. So you have to go take those out. After you do that little bit of work, you plaster it into the Composer project template, go to town. It's that simple. I say it's that simple. Yeah, a little bit of bootleg work, but it's not me going in there saying, oh, let's see, where did they put the views module? Is that in sites default? Oh, really? Oh, they put it over there. It's in the custom folder, that kind of thing, And then also, the freebie you get out of this is with a composer build, everything's organized. All your contributed modules go into the contrib folder. All of your custom modules go wherever you want to put them, technically, but I put them in the custom folder. Really nice. Yes?
So based on what we saw at Get Crackin', I'm guessing you pushed a Drupal 7 Composer project to Pantheon?
Yes.
And did you have to do, because I know when you push Pantheon, you have to commit core and modules and themes and everything to make sure that they make it, but did you have to run the prepare for Pantheon script to remove the Git directories from all the contrib modules?
Yes. So let's talk about that really quick. Pantheon has their very own Composer project. Okay, they've taken the Drupal project version, the default one, and they've modified it. So we can go over here and go to Drupal Composer Pantheon. There it is. Get over there. So this is, yep. 1 second. Thinking about it. This is drop 7 with the Composer file. So this is what it's including. Pantheon Composer example. That's what I'm looking for. But the Drupal 7 version of it. There it is. Here you go. Same process. You do a Composer create project. You get the little bit specialized composer.json. One of the biggest things that's different here is that instead of including Drupal version 7, you're including drops 7. I'm looking for it real quick. Oh, there it is. So there's this guy right here. That's the big difference. And then over here, if you look in our scripts, we have our build assets, which is prepare for Pantheon, and Composer install, and all that jazz, just like you're used to. Anything else? Cool. Well, I hope y'all. What's that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How about, in Drupal 7, we're still using a lot of features. Can you play features in with this?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah, it's your custom code. It's just like any other custom module.
Yeah.
Throw it over there. Features is part of your deployed process at that point. Yeah, and you can do that. How many people, this is plugging Pantheon pretty hard right now, how many people use Quicksilver? You know, Quicksilver is really perfect for deployment processes. So what you can do is you can use their hook system to say, hey, when I update code, go run some drush commands like drush ccall and features revert and db up, that kind of stuff. And so what happens is you get this for free. I update my code manually through the interface, it runs the deployment process. I push something automated through CI, it runs the deployment process. And then I don't ever have to go worry about telling Circle CI, oh yeah, make sure you do the thing where you drush ccall on the multi-dev unit terminus and all that jazz. Or when I push to production, I don't have to say, oh yeah, I pushed code up, now I have to go to my local machine and say terminus, drush, ccall, all that jazz. Use Quicksilver. Do yourself a favor.
So if you wouldn't have like a Circle CI process, you would just push to your repository, then Quicksilver
would take care of
pick
it.
that up and then push it a version to do all those steps and push a version to Pantheon.
Well, Quicksilver, it would already be on Pantheon at that point, and Quicksilver would just take care of the rest of the deployment process stuff. Like,
Is Quicksilver from Pantheon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
yeah, it's the way you get your, little Slack messages whenever you do a deployment. It's the way you can get your I'm drawing a blank.
Automated testing.
automated testing, but I'm thinking about what's the system we go into? New Relic, that's it. Either flag or New Relic with releases, all that jazz. They have a whole library thing. Now, to go on the other side of the fence, Acquia has something really similar. It's called Cloud Hooks. Use that for your deployment process as well. That way, anytime you do any deployments, go over there. This is advice for free outside of the talk. I'm sorry, but you know it's something that's really helpful. That way you don't have to go and remember to do that thing, and it's repeatable.
Are there any independent services like that that could be an interface between a repository and let's say another kind of independent hosting where you'd have some hooks that would do some process like that?
I think you'd have to rely on your continuous integration at that point.
Yeah.
The question was, are there any independent, like for independent or custom hosting, is there any services like Quicksilver hooks or Quicksilver or Cloud Hooks for Acquia? And the answer to that would literally be Jenkins or Travis or Circle CI at that point. All right, guys. I know I probably went on yammering for a little while. I really appreciate y'all coming up here and let me do that. If y'all would, please provide feedback for the talk. It helps me a lot. It also helps the camp. So get on there. If you want to talk to me further about continuous integration or Composer workflow, or you want to BS over a beer, hit me up on Twitter or go over there to the Drupal.orgs and send me a message. Thank y'all very much.